When did you know?
Oh, God. I actually wrote this question down for you, too.
Did you?
For next time. Yeah.
I think that's a story that everyone is like, oh, yeah, I did that too.
I mean, they're at my house. I'm having them over for New Year's. We're feeding them pizza.
Oh, my God.
I felt like this was also my way of getting out of my sexuality, of turning away from what I presume to be sin. We're back.
We're back.
Hi, everybody. It is Matt.
And Michael.
And we are coming to you live from Who's Your Daddy Podcast, Season 2.
Who's Your Daddy Podcast Studios in Portland, Oregon.
This time, we are back, bigger, juicier, thicker than ever.
Definitely thicker.
Thicker. It is winter. It is cuffing season. Here we go. Last season, we talked a lot about having babies.
We did.
But I want to address the elephant in the room.
We don't have any babies.
We don't have babies.
We don't have babies.
Yes, we are gay, though.
A little bit.
That's the elephant in the room. We are a podcast about gay parenthood, and we are not gay parents.
Yeah.
But we are gay.
We're at least 50% of what we set out to accomplish.
And we have been trying. We've been trying so hard to have babies and get pregnant. We're just trying and trying and trying. And what do we have to show for it? A podcast.
A podcast.
Anyway, this podcast this season, we are changing things up. We're going to, because we are in a waiting period right now. We have been matched with the surrogate, but we are waiting before we can get pregnant. There are a bunch of steps, things that are happening. We'll go into it a little bit later when things are cleared. But right now, we're just waiting. So while we wait, we are going to be talking a lot about ourselves, our pasts, and a lot of issues that pertain to LGBTQ plus people.
I think with season 2 and maybe like just going forward, this might just become the norm, but there's a lot of things to talk about, obviously, with surrogacy and adoption and things like that. But there's also a lot to talk about just in general, in life, in the gay community, I don't know, we're traveling a lot. I think there's just like current events. There's
One of the biggest things
I like
from
to
last
talk
season
about
that I feel like we didn't do that I wish we had
What?
is be like, hey, this is who we are. Hi, I'm a person. This is my story. Here's a little bit about me.
Yeah.
We definitely leaned heavy on the education aspects last season. And this season, we're going to get a lot more personal. We're going to go deep into our pasts.
How deep?
Deep.
He means deep.
Dang. That was good. And we thought, what better way to start than with a topic that is so personal to both of us. It's kind of like the most impactful time of our lives, and that would be our coming out stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the most like influential part of both of our lives, where like things completely flipped, right? It's like a 180 moment.
And I know like nowadays, a lot of people, Gen Zers, don't necessarily have these like the same kind of like closeted experience and then this big coming out moment. But I think for us going through middle school and high school, college, in the closet, and then finally coming to this point where everything breaks and you're just like coming out.
I think that it still exists. I just think it's like
definitely environmental
location and environmental dependent. So I definitely think it's still a big deal for a lot of people because we still get emails and messages about like, oh my gosh, like I would like to come out, but I don't know how. Like, what's your advice?
I just don't see those like big coming out stories. You
don't notice it quite as much. Honestly, you mostly see it with like celebrity now, and it's like, oh, this soccer player came out, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to be as big of a deal as it was.
No, and it shouldn't.
And it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be.
Right, I know. But we're going to talk about when it was a big deal.
It did there was this like how many years do you think it was? Like a 6-year, 8-year period where maybe it was because it was this era of YouTube that we were involved in. And then like, I feel like just this cascade of coming out videos.
And it was like the world was ending or the world was changing when you came out. It was this big moment.
I think there was a lot less representation maybe around that moment.
Totally.
And so everybody was like just trying to like put their own story out there.
Yeah, but it was a big unknown because you'd put this message out and you're like, I'm not sure how this is going to be received by anybody I know.
So today we are going to jump into Matthew's coming out story, and then next time we'll jump into mine. So,
Okay.
Matthew, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, but then I'm just going to let you go for it.
Yes.
My favorite question.
Oh.
Actually, everyone's favorite question that I think you might hate. Do you know what it is?
No.
When did you know?
Oh, God. I actually wrote this question down for you, too.
Did you?
For next time. Yeah. When did I know? I knew from a very young age that something felt off. Something felt different.
Actually, I think something just felt right.
Well, I'm gonna talk about this from like my perspective.
No. I understand.
And like I noticed when I was younger, I think one of the biggest things when I was even 4 years old, 5 years old, noticed I had a big attraction towards art, and I was repulsed by sports. So, hi, my name's Matthew Schuler. I am from a small town in Oregon called Albany. It's a town of about 45,000 people when I was growing up there. It's a mix of like liberal and conservative, like 50-50.
It's literally
honestly
50-50.
like border, just on the border of like, you have Trump territory there, you have liberal people there. It's right on the I-5 corridor, which if you don't know is like the big main artery highway down the entire West Coast.
Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA.
Exactly. Yep, Albany's right on that highway, but it's also a big like grass seed farming district, plus like mills
and like logging,
industrial.
maybe.
Yeah,
and
there's
like
a lot of
forestry
industry there.
and yeah.
So it's very like blue collar. My dad worked as an electrician. My mom worked several jobs when I was growing up. She never really stayed in one place, but she worked at a factory for a while. So
What
yeah.
factory?
Pacific Cast Technologies is what it was. They made
didn't
like
know
an
that.
airplane part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
I didn't know that part.
Anyway, so this big blue collar 50-50 area of like liberalism, conservative people.
It's hard to say. Honestly, it's it
Yeah.
just a little, it sticks in your throat a little bit.
But I just wanted to like lay that groundwork because I did feel like I was growing up in this area that was just teetering, and it felt like everything was politicized.
Really?
It's battleground. It's like right in the middle. People were extreme.
Oh,
You were either like super conservative, diehard, or you were super liberal. And there was not a lot. It was just so divided.
I think I've noticed that living here is that you're like one side, very far one side or very far the other. That's not always true, but it seems more pronounced than where I grew up. But I guess I didn't think about it being like from your childhood, like 20 years ago, being the exact same. I sort of thought like maybe 2016.
Oh, it's definitely a change.
Like ramped
but
it up a little bit.
I wanted to lay that groundwork because that I think had a big impact on how I grew up and how I saw myself and how I saw my sexuality.
Yeah.
So I noticed that I had this strong affinity towards art. I was repulsed by sports. I have one full older brother. He's 2 years older than me. And he was in love with sports. He was in basketball and football and baseball and track, and he was on varsity on all these things. And even in elementary school, I noticed that there's this big difference between him and I. I noticed that my parents like really prided themselves in the sports that he was doing.
Oh, sure.
And I didn't see that same attention towards me with art. Of course, like, what am I doing? I'm doing
what kind of
watercolor.
art?
I'm doing water. I mean, I'm in elementary school. Watercolors, okay? Like, we're not doing anything.
You're like, my parents didn't pin all of my watercolor paintings on the fridge.
But just to draw the difference of like, we were going to my brother's basketball games, football games, etc. like 3 times a week, and I was always in the bleachers. Like, I spent so much time in the bleachers, and even today I kind of hate sports because of like this experience.
Yeah, we're still working through that.
Yeah, I just felt so like trapped in that, and I kept asking myself like, why don't I fit into this mold of what I am supposed to be? I felt like I needed to be this athletic person, and these feelings just multiplied and got more and more complicated as I grew up. As I started to notice that my body was different than other boys in my class. People started to outgrow me. People started to be able to lift more. Started to notice that my body wasn't as strong as their bodies. And they were getting girlfriends. But why weren't the girls attracted to me? Or why, like...
Or like, I mean, you weren't really attracted to girls, though.
No,
right?
But I thought like this is just how everybody else felt. And there was something wrong with me to make it so that the girls weren't attracted to me as well. So, yeah, I started to notice things seriously in 5th grade. That's when things started to click and fall into place. I actually had an imaginary friend
In 5th grade?
in third grade.
In 3rd grade?
Yeah, but I had an imaginary friend for
What was
years.
their name?
I don't know.
What?
I cannot remember what I don't think I ever named them. God,
Would you talk to them?
This just spirals, Michael. I
I
swear.
knew when you were like, I think I'm going to try and do this in 30 minutes. I was like, there's absolutely no way.
I'm still going to get this in 30 minutes. I'm going to get it. I'm going to do it.
Okay.
We're going to keep this short.
I only
Try
asked
to.
one question.
I know, but I really want to just tell my story.
No, I know. I agree. Take your time.
So, yeah, I had an imaginary friend. For everyone listening, I don't know if you guys have had imaginary friends before or if you grew up in a religious environment, but this gets complicated. Like, it really spirals and gets into a tight knot. It's all interrelated, and it's weird. It's super weird when I talk about it. Like, this makes me nervous. But my imaginary friend was, like, associated with, like, I thought demonic tendencies.
What?
And I attributed those factors towards my imaginary friend.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Your imaginary friend had demonic tendencies, but you were creating those demonic tendencies?
In my mind.
Whoa.
So, yeah. And I attributed this imaginary friend to be related to my sexuality.
Did you even like know the word sexuality? I mean, like in 5th grade?
Even in 3rd grade, I knew that I was more attracted to being around boys. I didn't attribute that to like sexually. I was just like, I wanted to be around boys. And then I made this loose association that this imaginary friend was influencing me to like spend more time around boys and like rebel, not listen to my parents, do stupid little kid stuff that I shouldn't be doing.
Okay.
I would like imagine that my imaginary friend was in my physical space and was like,
what did they look like?
at one time they took the shape of a centipede.
Ew.
Yeah.
That's just, no.
Yeah.
That's not a friend.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
a
telling you, it's really creepy and weird.
Straight up demon.
Yeah. So, wow, I don't think I've ever talked about that before.
No, you haven't. I've never heard
Except
this story.
maybe in therapy.
Like 9 years of knowing you. I've never known that you had a centipede.
But I'm sure I'm not the only person
friend
who had like this weird religious. I feel like my mind was just messed up and trying to
Do you think
express itself in different ways.
Were you hearing like, you know how some religious practices it'll be like cast out the demons and like I don't know, it's just a little bit more intense than some other religious practices. Were you hearing like the whole like, oh, you need to like cast out your demons and you need to, I don't know, do all this like weird things? Or because your dad was Catholic, so I guess, and my parents were Catholic too, so.
No, yeah, my dad raised me Catholic. My mom was Baptist. There was always that divide. My mom never converted. Yeah, we definitely grew up with like these ideals of this is how you're supposed to live. And there was the expectation that like I was to marry a woman. My brother was to marry a woman, and we were going to produce lots of children and play sports and be really athletic and manly.
Did your parents say that, or was that something that like you just saw and observed?
Both.
Your parents were like, you're going to marry a girl and have a lot of babies.
There was a lot of like assumptions, you know, and that's okay. That was kind of like the time. So, you know, my parents would assume that I'm going to be dating girls and then I'm going to get married and have children.
Right.
And just like they assume that I would like sports and eventually get into sports and start playing sports like my brother.
But was it like talked about a lot?
Yeah.
I mean, like you're going to marry a girl and you're going to have a bunch of babies. And like, I mean, was that like, or was that just like a thing that you were seeing and then you were like, oh, I must do that?
Both.
Interesting.
But that was also like ingrained in the culture in school.
No, totally.
Yeah.
It's totally,
we understand.
It's a heteronormative
totally
society. I just think maybe like, yeah, that's interesting.
But so I had this imaginary friend. I developed this kind of weird energy relationship with myself through that. And I started to become a lot more introspective, thinking to myself, how am I going to get rid of this imaginary friend who really seems like an enemy, who is trying to make me gay? And then I got into 5th grade, and that's when like things started to really happen for me. Things clicked into place where I just had this realization of like, oh my God, I'm not attracted to women. I'm not attracted to girls. And I noticed that my peers were. This immediately turned into like me panicking and feeling like I needed to have a best friend. So that continued all through middle school, where I was like, I just need to have a best friend and become the most popular person in school. The perfectionism started there. 5th grade. I was like, all right, I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to be the best of the best. I'm going to be the most popular kid in school. And I'm going to control everything so that I feel okay about myself.
Yeah.
And everybody will love me. Sound familiar?
I think that's a story that everyone is like, oh yeah, I did that too.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I did overachieve and join multiple clubs and try and do all the things and be the best at everything to compensate for the fact that I didn't like girls and I couldn't have attention for liking girls and being really, really good at sports.
And
That
are we
makes a lot of
still
sense.
overcompensating?
Always.
Perfectionism.
I mean, I'm sure.
It's real.
Oh yeah.
I still deal with it. So, of course, any little thing that went wrong was like the absolute worst, and it felt like my world was crumbling down. That's called middle school. Yeah. Were you like obsessed with having a best friend in middle school?
I don't think I was no, but I think I was like just not as introspective maybe as you were as a kid. I don't know. In middle school, I guess I was in like more of like a popular-ish crowd. But again, we can get into my story later.
Yeah, it totally
But you can
sounds
ask me if you want.
less intense, I guess.
My middle school, it was a small.
Yeah.
I was like a little bit athletic, but not that. Like I wasn't the best at anything.
With this comparison of like you versus me, I think people are going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, he's insane.
Who, you?
Yeah.
Oh. No, I don't think that's true.
And perhaps I was as a kid.
Who knows?
I don't identify
You had a lot
with
going,
that person anymore.
You had a lot going on.
I did.
I also think maybe your middle school, like were people like coupled up a lot? Like,
Oh, totally.
See, and I think I mean, people were like had girlfriends, but they like never saw
I
them,
knew
never
a girl
talked to them.
in 6th grade who got pregnant.
No, yeah, I don't know of my friends like being like sexually active in middle school.
Yeah, no, my friends were.
High school.
This was weird.
Maybe you were just in like a bigger school and they had more people and more things were happening.
Yeah.
And like more adult behavior.
My school was like Euphoria.
Yeah, mine was not. Mine was like just more innocent, I think. And like cuz it was everybody knew everybody. Maybe that was part of it and it was like but yeah.
Your school wasn't like Euphoria?
No, my school. Not that I remember.
With drugs, sex, alcohol.
No. That's not my experience.
That was my middle school. Yeah, no, we would like sit around, we'd play truth or dare, spin the bottle. It was so awkward. So like my first kiss was in 5th grade, 6th grade, somewhere around there. My first girlfriend was in 5th grade. And then I had girlfriends all through 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, off and on.
But you said girls didn't like you, but you had a bunch of girlfriends.
I know, but I still was like, they don't like me, you know?
Oh, internal speak.
Totally. Obsession with best friends. That kind of developed. Little did I know that I wanted them to be my boyfriend. But I developed this like necessity to have a male figure really close to me in 6th grade, 7th grade. And I wasn't necessarily being like sexually attracted to them, but I was attracted to being around them. I was like,
yeah, no, that makes sense.
I just want to be around them and I want their attention and energy towards me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty normal.
Yeah. And so I became like the best friend who was there through all of their dating experiences. I would be hooking this person up with this person. I was a great matchmaker. I was a great friend. I would get crushed by just things that would happen. I had this one friend over who I, at the time, like wanted to be my best friend so bad. And he really liked hanging out with another guy that like lived on the next street over. And it was New Year's. We were going to have a sleepover. It's going to be fantastic. And I had my Harry Potter Lego collection up on my table.
I do know this.
Yeah. And then my friend from the other street, who we had kind of a rivalry. No joke. We were like fighting over the same friends. It was bad. We weren't like...
Just Dalton.
No, it was not Dalton.
Oh, I thought you said across the street.
It's Chad.
Ew.
Everybody knows a Chad, and Chad is a dick.
Yeah.
And Chad came over to my house, and he was telling secrets to my other friend. Okay, I'll name him Christian. And Chad and Christian were telling secrets to each other and whatever. And then they decided that I was no longer a part of their group somehow. I mean, they're at my house. I'm having them over for New Year's. We're feeding them pizza.
Oh my God.
And one of them goes upstairs and throws a football at my Harry Potter Lego collection. And the whole thing fell off the table and crumbled into
Now that man had a demonic centipede imaginary friend.
Jesus.
That is erratic behavior.
I was crushed. I was so crushed. I had been collecting the Harry Potter Lego sets since 4th grade at the time. I was in 7th grade. It'd been 3 years. I had a huge collection. I had the whole
What did your
Hogwarts
parents
castle.
do? What did your parents do?
What do you mean? Oh, like when that happened?
I would go nuclear.
I mean, they were kind of like, y'all do not need to be throwing the football in the house. And that is not great that happened. But they weren't angry. And
we would have a full-on 30-minute session of like, what is going on? Why are you doing that? Like, why would you throw a football at that?
I full on cried, but I like controlled my emotions. I was like, it's okay. I can't, like, I need to save face and not show them that I'm struggling here. So then the next day, it snowed overnight and we went to go make snow forts and play in the snow all together. And I was like, things are going well. I'm picking it back up. Like, let's be best friends again. They were like throwing snowballs at each other, having snowball fight. And I'm like, I don't want to be aggressive right now. I just want to be creative. So I made this enormous snow fort. And it was the biggest like igloo snow fort thing that I've ever made. And I was so proud of it that I like brought Christian and Chad over. I'm like, look at my snow fort. Like, isn't it great? It's awesome. You guys can use it for, like your snowball fight, whatever. And I'm like, I'll be right back. I'm going to go grab my mom's camera and take a picture of it. And so I ran inside, grabbed my mom's camera, and then I ran back out. And when I got back to the snow fort, it was completely demolished.
These people are insane.
It was just like literally smashed to the ground. There was nothing left.
Why? And why? What did they say? Like, what is the...
They laughed. They were like off on their own.
You literally are like, we're friends with like the crazy kids in the Christmas Story. You know, the ones with the yellow eyes?
Yeah, but
by
this
God,
is like...
he had yellow eyes.
This is
Your
not...
friend had, by God, he had freaking yellow eyes.
I mean, yeah, this is pretty messed up.
That is really messed up.
I ran inside and I cried and I didn't talk to them again.
Yeah, that's what I would do too.
And I sat
I would
in my
probably get in a
mom's
fight.
arms, bawling, and we watched Monk. You remember Monk?
Yeah, I'd never watched it. I just remember that it was a show.
Who remembers Monk? It's a guy with OCD and he solves crimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. And speaking of mental illness. So
the question was, when did you know?
I knew.
School. Okay. Sounds good. Okay, well, you have your own outline, so
yeah,
you just get to it.
We're gonna get into the religious stuff now.
That was my next question. Was like, why was it so hard? So as far as like telling your coming out story, why was it so hard? And obviously, I think this is probably the biggest.
We talked a little bit about kind of like those religious undertones in the area that I grew up in, and I feel like I'm so psychoanalyzing everything now about my story. But this is really kind of
you're like I've had some therapy, and now that I'm retelling it, I'm like. Oh.
Yeah. I think in the past when I've told my story, I've just been like, oh, this happened, and then this happened. And then I was like really messed up.
And now you're like, oh man, now I know how the gears are messed up.
Yeah. I'm like, what the fuck? I had an imaginary centipede.
I know. This is informative for when we have kids. I'm just going to sit them down and be like, do you have an imaginary centipede friend? Do we need to talk?
Yeah, it's real. So going through middle school into high school, I joined this organization called YoungLife. And I'm sure some of you listening have heard of YoungLife. I'm sure some of you listening have been in YoungLife.
I never knew what YoungLife was. And I keep seeing and meeting people that you're like, oh yeah, I know you through YoungLife.
Honestly, much like ex-Mormons meet ex-Mormons after they get out of the church, much like ex-YoungLifers meet ex-YoungLifers and they just understand each other. So YoungLife is an organization that caters towards youth. It's a lot of young adults leading it as spiritual leaders, youth pastors, mentors.
Pastors.
Sure, Michael.
Not pastures.
Pastures. A pasture. How do you say pastor?
A pastor.
Pasture.
No. A pasture is where horses go and graze on grass?
It's a youth pasture.
Pasture.
I don't know. I don't understand the difference here.
Pasture.
I think we're just dotting I's here.
My mom was a speech language pathologist.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it
And
worked
are
really
you
well.
pathologizing me?
I am.
Oh, God. So, YoungLife. YoungLife has these church camps around the country, and
Non-denominational.
they're non-denominational, right?
Yeah.
They have a little bit of a conservative bent to them. I say a little bit, but it's
Shocking.
probably quite significant. I'm still kind of like, I still look at my days in YoungLife with a lot of joy. Like, I had a really good time.
Cults are fun. Just kidding.
Yeah. The Rajneesh camp in Oregon.
Oh God. Okay. History.
Yeah. There's a camp in Eastern Oregon. It's now called Washington Family Ranch. It used to be called Wild Horse Canyon. And both of those camps were owned by YoungLife in the late 1990s to present day. In the 80s, it was owned by a cult. And the cult was led by Ashwan Rajneesh. And this was a cult leader. There's a Netflix documentary. You have got to go watch it. I think it's called Wild Wild Country.
I don't remember. I remember we watched it, but I don't remember what it's called.
They basically were trying to make their own nation within the United States to say, like, this is our own independent sphere. And they're trying to gain political power in Eastern Oregon. And they actually poisoned a bunch of salad bars at restaurants around Eastern Oregon around the time of election in order that people would get sick and stay home and wouldn't vote so that they could gain control over the neighboring districts of their cult.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So that is the place where YoungLife has now set up camp. And kids are coming over to learn about
because they
Jesus.
kind of like built this whole city.
Right.
So like
It's a city. It's basically a city in the middle of the desert, middle of nowhere. It's kind of amazing. So
in a creepy weird way.
No kidding. I got super involved in YoungLife in high school, and I felt like this was kind of like my calling in life to be a YoungLife leader, to lead people to the church, and to help them find a relationship with Jesus. And I felt like this was also my way of getting out of my sexuality, of turning away from what I presumed to be sin at the time, and to learn how I could become straight and like women and be normal like all of my peers. Simultaneously, as I tried to like go up this path of like self-righteousness, I just kept feeling like I was leading a false life, and I started to hate myself more and more and more internally. But externally, I was this confident youth pastor, like,
good job, you said it right.
Oh, cool. Person who was bringing a lot of people to this youth group. So you have like two people living in one body.
Yeah.
And along with the perfectionism, I was involved in a ton of clubs, a ton of sports. And this basically got to a boiling point in my junior year. This was after I spent the summer working at one of the YoungLife camps. I was actually working at Washington Family Ranch during the summer. They get high school students to come over and volunteer for an entire summer where they're working, but they're also building a relationship with Jesus, building a relationship with each other. And it's a lot of fun, but you do a lot of work. So could be problematic. Different discussion for a different time. But it's extremely like religiously impactful in the sense that you dive in super deep spiritually. You don't have cell service. You don't have like any access to the outside world. You're basically like stuck in this vacuum of hyper religiousness for 2 months. And you're with a bunch of kids that are in the same space. And so it really, it's cult like. I remember writing on a piece of paper while I was there that I would relinquish all of my sexuality and get over this sin that I had, this deep sin. And I wrote it on a piece of paper while we were at a bonfire because we were basically giving up our deepest sins. We're writing our deepest, darkest secrets on these papers. Jeez. And we were throwing them into the fire to get rid of them. So I was legitimately denying my sexuality and throwing it into the fire to say, like, that is not a part of me. Which, like, at the time, I thought this was, like, the most powerful moment for my life of being able to, like, move forward and live as a straight person.
My assumption is that was like emotional for everybody. Like, was it a very like everyone's just like crying and
Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
I wonder how many other people wrote that same thing down.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Especially since some of my relationships occurred in the camp. And like,
What?
oh, totally.
What do you mean?
There was this all blends in together. There's a guy at the camp. His name, we'll call him Fred because I don't want to like give away his real name. I don't know where he is or where he's at now. So we're just going to call him Fred.
Okay.
Him and I grew a strong bond. He was a few years older than me. I actually think he was a year after high school.
Okay.
Like
and
he had
you were
just
how old?
graduated. I was 15.
Okay.
And we were talking a lot. We were cuddling. We were telling each other our deepest, darkest secrets. And we kept texting after the camp and like maintained this strong relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he would like give me these back rubs, but he would like climb on top of me and then start like just really kind of like pushing me in a what I now see as a sexual way. But at the time thought it was very like we're bros being innocent and giving each other back rubs.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole environment at YoungLife camps was so homoerotic because there was so much repression
Yeah.
and people were just like doing their best to not be sexual, but when you repress it to that extent, it just like comes out in the weirdest ways. So
Yeah, I mean it's
just necessary. Like it necessarily comes out if you cover a pressure pot and like
yeah.
tie down the pot,
that
it's gonna
makes sense.
burst at some point.
Were you like uncomfortable or like no?
I did get uncomfortable, and that's when things started to go south, because he got like kind of controlling, and he'd try to like overpower me, and
like physically.
Physically.
Hey.
I had another friend at school, and it was weird because like I thought I think he could have been straight. I don't know what his deal is, but like he befriended one of my other friends at school, and then he like started having sex with her.
Oh, female.
And he'd like come over, stay at my house, have sex with this other person who he'd like hook up with
At your house.
at my house.
Oh, this is very
And then he'd come and like try to climb on top of me, and he'd be like sobbing and apologizing to me for doing stuff with this girl. And then it was like all this emotional dump of like, I don't know what I'm doing in life. I was so confused. And
advice for the kids listening out there: cut that person out immediately.
it was bad. And he lived like he lived up in Portland, so he was driving down to see me about an hour and a half away. And at the same time, we're reading the Bible together. We're praying together.
Well, I mean, this story's played out like thousands of times.
Yeah.
Like we're doing
hindsight's 2020, babe.
Yeah, we're like doing all these things that seem like religious and spiritual and godly, and then
So this like escalated because my friend who was a girl at the high school, she like blocked him and was like, I don't want anything to do with him. Now he's trying to stalk me. He's showing up at my house. He's following me. And so I tried to talk to him and be like, you need to back off and not do this anymore. You need to stay away, keep your distance. And then that's when he turned on me. He called my house over 100 times in a day.
What did your parents say?
They were freaking out.
They were like, who is this person?
Yeah.
And you're like,
He left voicemails on our answering machine, sobbing into the phone.
is this person like, oh my God.
Like
you don't know where they're at today, right?
No, I don't. But it
God.
escalated. It went from like zero, like something that I thought was completely platonic and like okay, to 100 and like that. Like something just snapped. And I didn't know what was happening. It was my first time like ever experiencing anything that was like remotely sexual with another guy. And all of a sudden it felt like shit was hitting the fan. My parents were now involved and we're trying to like decipher like, why is this guy calling our house? Why is he crying into the phone? Why won't he leave you alone? Why are you spending so much time up in your room alone with him? Like all these questions. And I just lost it because I felt like I had failed. I felt like I had not held up my commitment of abstaining sexually and not like being involved with other men. And I could tell that my mind was like bending into this, like, am I attracted to this person? And this just spiraled into this cycle of like shame and fear and doubt. And
Well, I mean, sounds like a relatively traumatic experience on top
totally.
of the fact that you were trying to like suppress it. So then it was like the thing that you're trying to suppress is now traumatic and probably reinforcing your worldview that, yes, I should not do this because it will lead to
bad
bad
things
things.
like this.
Yeah.
And throughout this entire like narrative of a few months of this like relationship kind of unfolding, my parents and I became extremely distant from each other, and I became super mistrusting of them. One, because they were accusatory of what was going on with this guy, and two, just because of all this repression, I was afraid that they would find me out. So I just started cutting myself off from other people. I like didn't want to talk to anyone. And then that's what led me down a really dark path that winter.
And you're how old?
15,
15.
going on 16. Could have
So
been
like
16.
sophomore, junior.
It was a
sophomore.
junior.
Yeah.
So 16 that winter. And that's when I started to have suicidal ideation.
That was kind of earlier on than maybe what I perceived before. But yeah.
Yeah, that was like my darkest time.
Yeah.
I remember one night just kind of beside myself, and I like went down to my parents' room and was crying, and I don't know what had happened or transpired before that led me to this point, but I just remember like telling my parents, I'm like, I don't believe you love me. Um and like I felt so strongly about that. And I think that's what was a huge red flag for both of my parents.
Mm.
And that's when they contacted someone for counseling to like figure out what was going on.
Wow.
And what I didn't know is that they were also going to counseling sessions to talk about what was happening at
Like,
the time.
Oh, with you.
Without me. They would go separately.
No. But they were like, our son is like doing XYZ and like we just don't know what to do or like how to act. Or were they doing their own therapy like within themselves, between themselves?
No, they didn't know how to handle
Oh, okay, yeah.
what was going on. They were confused. They were like, why is
good
he
for them.
acting this way? What's happening? And I'm pretty sure, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure that the therapist was like, he could be gay. Like, this is how you need to support and like figure it out. So there was a really big shift that happened with how my parents treated me and talked to me after we started going to therapy.
Together.
I did not go. We had one session together, like all together. When they were going separately on their own and I was going separately on my own, my parents learned how they could like talk to me without making me
Like
feel
triggering you.
attacked or triggered or defensive.
Did you ever have pushback on that, on going to therapy? Or you were like, no, that sounds good? Or you were like, I don't need it?
No, when it was first presented to me, I was in such a defeated state that I didn't have energy. I didn't have anything. Like I had no feedback.
Like in the therapy session when they're like asking you questions?
No,
or just
when they were when they're like, we think we need to go to therapy. I'm just like, I just have nothing to. I can't argue it. I'm not gonna like support it. I'm just like there. I did not want to exist anymore at that point. Like I don't. I remember like thinking about how I could not be alive anymore.
Right.
All of the ideas were just like not pleasant to think about and not something that I necessarily wanted to do.
Right.
I just was thinking about it in the sense of like, how can I make the pain stop and how can I get out of this? Like I felt so much shame and guilt at that time that I didn't feel like there was any way out.
Mm-hmm.
And that this was my only option. So I think like really confronting it with my parents and kind of like this cry for help of as like, you don't love me anymore. They asked me like, are you thinking about hurting yourself? And I said yes. And
well, I mean, you at least you're honest, and so that they could like, they were at least aware. I feel like some people might skirt around the issue, and then
possibly
lie or just be like, oh no, I'm fine, put on a face.
But I think at that point I was so defeated. I didn't really like. I didn't want to lie about something else.
You didn't have enough energy.
Didn't have enough energy to
like put on another face. You were just like,
I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to like fight anymore. I just was like, yeah, I'm done. Like that's it.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, did therapy help, or like
it did.
did the discussion about like sexuality come up, or was it more just like
It did, but I denied it.
Okay.
Denied it for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Finally acknowledged it, I think, my senior year. We had a discussion in therapy, and she said that she absolutely was totally okay supporting me through my sexuality and that there was nothing wrong with it, you know? And I was convinced, I'm like, no, religiously, like, this doesn't work for me. It's a sin. I'm not going to support it. I need to find a way to not be gay. And she's like, we can try cognitive behavior therapy through it, but I do not recommend this. This is not right. Like, you need to address it. But she's like, if this is the only choice, then I can try to help you with tools to mentally think through this so that you don't go to a dark place, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can we put this on pause or keep you at a level where you're surviving and doing okay until you're ready to address the issue, basically.
Yeah.
And she really like encouraged me. She's like, hey, like in the future, if you're at college and you meet somebody and like you feel attraction towards that person, like you should feel free to experiment with that and like just see what happens. Like you don't write everything off and say no. Like
Right.
just keep an open mind, and if you want to be straight now, that's okay, but you might change your mind later and that's also okay.
Mm.
And so she kept reinforcing that, which was good because I think it really helped with the building blocks towards when I was in college to finally come out.
So I think we figured out why it was so difficult. Mostly, I feel like it was mostly religious based, not community based. Well, I guess if your community is heavily influenced by religion, I guess it could be a little combination of both.
Yeah, I mean, my community was YoungLife.
Was YoungLife, and like that's kind
Religion.
of like where your identity lied.
Yeah, and in that, like, there was this whole. I had such a hard time with my dad because
Mm.
he had this strong Catholic conviction. Conviction,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going against that by being non-denominational.
Mm.
So if you can imagine, like,
Mhm.
me thinking my dad is having such a hard time with me just not even being Catholic, just because I'm going to like a different denomination.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine me? Like, I'm like, if I came out as gay, he would disown me.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be no way. Of course, that was completely wrong.
Right.
But we know that now. So that goes into college.
I was gonna say my next question was like, how did like your experience at college affect kind of like the trajectory of everything?
I actually want to.
Because you went to a Christian college.
Yeah, and I want to do a whole episode on like my journey through Christian university and how that played into the the deep dark secrets of Christian university and the underground.
Maybe we should just make
homosexual
that
world.
part episode 2, and then we'll just put me later.
Oh God, no! It's a good story for any point in time. But it's a lot more fun than maybe the coming out story that we've been talking about. But yeah, simply put, college, the first 3 years, I was in the closet in college and made a good group of friends my freshman year. We all loved cross country. We were all not super sporty, but we were cute little twinks and it was fun. We loved hanging out together.
Was that like a bright spot, kind of like to get out of high school, get out of Albany, go to Seattle, go to college? Like,
Yeah.
Was that helpful?
Right. Yeah. At that point, I had written off homosexuality. I said, like, I am completely clean from it. I like any thought that comes up sexually, I'm just going to shut down immediately. And
I'm just gonna cuddle real hard and keep my clothes on.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I like had this reinvigorated like sense of religiousness.
Did it play into why you chose a Christian
Seattle,
university?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. 100%.
You were like, this will keep me straight.
Yep, for sure. I was like, this is my path. I'm going to pray the gay away and I'm going to go to this religious university that's going to keep me in check. And I'm going to become a doctor and I'm going to be better than everyone else. and I'm gonna be perfect because then everyone will love me.
God.
Oh, it's a tale as old as time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Went through college, 3 years, same pattern as high school. It was a mess. And then, and I want to get into it in another episode. I will go deep into that. But for time's sake, we're going to keep it there. And then I took a lot of trips to, not a lot of trips. I took 2 trips to Europe, one in summer of 2011, one in summer of 2012. And this was all YouTube related because I was super into YouTube and I was going to meet YouTubers and all that. And a lot of YouTubers were from the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot from them. And I learned a lot about accepting and loving myself.
That's really cool.
And keeping an open mind about things.
Yeah.
When you travel, you just like, it opens your mind and it allows you to get out of your current situation, which is exactly what I needed. I needed to go see that there was something beyond my Christian university bubble and that people were living in a different way and they were happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that like changed my life.
Yeah, definitely.
So being exposed to other people and in different cultures and then seeing that they were gay and open about it and had tons of friends, were totally fine. People accepted them. People loved them.
And they felt like relieved.
And it was so
to, like,
different
be honest.
from what I was seeing back home. That was powerful.
Oh, yeah.
And I came back. I started to talk about my sexuality with people and tell them like, well, close friends that I trusted, like, this is something I've been struggling with and I don't know where I'm at on it. And that conversation just transformed over and over and over again for about a year until midway through junior year when I was ready to talk to my parents about it.
That's so interesting. So yours was like this long discussion.
Yeah.
Over the course of an entire year.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we will get into how mine is different later.
Yeah.
So
we
then,
know how things ended with it.
Yeah. So how did you bring it up to your parents?
Sat on the couch crying for a while.
Okay, you were like always, I just sit there,
cried.
I bawl my eyes out, bare my soul, and then just see what happens.
I think my parents went out to dinner or something. They had an event they're going to, and it was on Christmas break. And they came back home, and I was like laying on the couch after a nice cry sesh and watching a movie, maybe, I don't know. And then I like peeked my head up, and I was like, "Hi, I need to talk to you."
And then just immediate tears.
Yes, like waterworks immediately. They sat down, or they like knelt down by the couch, or my mom did. My dad was in the kitchen, I think, and my mom's like, "What's up?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have something to tell you."
But then what did you say? Was it like, I'm gay, or like, I don't know? Or were you like,
I was like,
did you still say like, I'm struggling?
well, yeah, I kind of framed it like, I think I have attraction towards men and women. And I was like, I think I might be bi. And was still in this in between of like, I'm not ready to fully come out as gay. I could not let go of this hope and this thought that maybe I would be able to find a female that I would like fall in love with and could marry and live a happy life with.
You weren't ready to like write that off.
I was not ready to write that off.
Okay.
Yeah, that felt too. It felt like I was failing if I did that. Like I was giving up. So that's where I was at, and it took 3 months, 4 months for me to come out as fully gay.
But did they care? Wait, you skipped over like.
Oh,
did they care? Like, what was their?
Oh, they were wonderful. They were like, well, like, thank you for telling us. We love you no matter who you love, and that's okay. And I had a positive thing that happened before I came out to them, which was like a childhood friend of ours had recently come out to their parent, and my mom was friends with that parent, and so she like told me about it and was like, I totally like see that and think that's great and like totally fine. I'm so happy he came out. And she's like, I really don't see anything wrong with it. And if anybody else came out, I would fully support them. So
is that cool?
Yeah. So this conversation had come up, and I knew that their perspective on homosexuality had changed since high school.
Did they make any comments about it before?
We just had a lot of derogatory, horrible commentary growing up. Like, my family's pretty vulgar. South Park comedy, humor. You know, like my brother, the words fag and using the word gay as in stupid were just common. That was just commonplace. That was like part of our vocabulary.
From your brother or from your parents or both?
Mostly from my brother, but my parents would chime in every once in a while.
Oh, like, oh, that's okay.
Maybe jokingly, very rarely, but it was enough for me to be like, I know where they stand, or this is at least
like early 2000s. It was a different time,
totally different time, and I was like right there with them, participating.
Like, yeah, that is gay.
Exactly. Yeah, totally, 100%. That's when I asked them. It was like January, February of 2013 that I asked them if I could come out publicly online. They told me to wait.
Okay, so then you said 3 months later, you were like, just kidding, I'm not bi, I'm gay.
Yep.
To friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
And then you asked if you could come out online publicly because you were actively making YouTube videos like once a week-ish, maybe?
Yeah.
Or a couple times a month.
Correct.
And so then it was like, okay, well, I have this like online persona that like maybe this would be helpful to share who I am fully and go from there. And then they told you to wait.
They wanted to tell family members before I told everybody in the public, YouTube followers, you know? Like,
how did
they didn't want my family to find out something so deeply personal to me.
So
a video?
Yeah, but how many people were you having to tell?
They told who they needed to tell.
Oh, they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
They did not tell me that I needed to tell anyone. It was like they wanted to talk to my aunts and my uncles and like tell close family.
This is so funny. Again, when we tell my story, it's just like so different.
Yeah, totally. Which I thought was weird. I was like, why do you need to, you know, like, I'm like, why do you need to tell people this is my thing? But at the same time, it was so new to them. And it was something that they needed to process and figure out. They needed time to process and figure it out before I like let open the floodgates and let everybody know what was happening.
Which is funny because now if anybody like questions your sexuality or like accepting you as a person, your mom is just like, bye.
Yeah, cut them off, right? Yeah. They just, I don't think they wanted anyone to be too shocked or surprised at the, you know, by a video.
Yeah.
So yeah, I made my coming out video. I have not watched my coming out video since posting it. And I think we should end this podcast with just like a little snippet from it.
That'll work. My other question was, why did you want to share it so publicly?
I wanted to create a video on YouTube to share it in the way that I did was because I felt like my life online was completely different than the life that I started to live in person. Because throughout my junior year, I started to date other men. I started to like finally express my sexuality, but online I was still portraying myself as a straight guy. And I was getting a lot of emails and a lot of questions from people who were in the closet wondering like, what do I do? How do I accept myself? Are you gay? Like, what's happening? You know, people
before you came out.
Before I came out. And I knew that a big percentage of my audience were LGBTQ. So I saw it on campus and I knew like how much people were struggling like I was. And I was tired of being in the dark and living in this school that told me that I was inferior to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that is bullshit. And like, we need to rip the Band-Aid off, like shine a light on it and say, yeah, this is what's going on. This whole religious outlook made me like, this is what I felt about myself because of all of this bullshit.
Yeah.
And I just wanted people to like look at it and say like, that is fucked up.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. When you were, I feel like part of your story is that like you were one person in real life and then one person online. But when you were younger, you felt like you identified more with people online.
Yeah.
And then this was sort of like a quick shift where like then your online personality, once after you came out in real life, now you felt like your real life was a little bit more authentic than your online life.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. And then
Yeah.
then they kind of like
And
melded.
YouTube kind of saved me in high school. I don't know if I'd go as far to say like YouTube saved my life, but it kind of did.
I mean, it like
really,
without it, you wouldn't have gone to like Europe, and you wouldn't have met people, and your perspective may not have changed so quickly.
without it, I don't know if I would have made it through high school.
Yeah,
Honestly,
that's kind of crazy to think about. Like, so I think that's maybe a struggle too with how people view social media. Is that's like it's not always bad. I think it's always kind of like, oh, we talk about like the bad parts of social media, but not as many people will say like, hey, this thing like definitely impacted my life in like in a major way.
YouTube was my way of dissociating from the hell that
Yeah.
I was living in high school
Yeah.
and being able to see that there was something else beyond what my current situation was.
I think it's also like maybe informative going just into like a quick parenting or kid raising sort of like thought process too, of like, if there's a kid and they're like always on the computer, always gaming or something like that, like it could be just like a little signal that maybe in real life things aren't necessarily going the way that they want, and maybe they're identifying really well, and maybe it's not a bad thing. Like obviously spending a lot of screen time is like a big no-no for people,
right.
and there's a big cloud over that. I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think about stuff.
Reason.
There might be a reason, right? There might be a reason. And instead of just being like, stop playing all those video games, maybe take a step back and think about like, I wonder why this person spends so much time on the computer. Everybody does everything for a reason. My mom always says this, like, kids don't just freak out for no reason. It's just like, you have to figure out what the reason is and then like address it instead of just reacting to it. That's always stuck with me. It's like, there's always a reason for the behavior.
Yeah.
And so you have to like dial back a little bit sometimes and be like, okay, what is going on? Like, what is the reason for the
And I think
behavior?
just like our minds and our bodies will do the craziest things to process and like figure out or handle stressors in life.
Right.
And I recognize so many points along my story that are like, oh, why? Like, how? You know, those moments where you're like, what the hell? How did that happen? Like, why did I act that way? And then to think about like the mind or the body like trying to survive or figure out, you know, function better, just be able to be itself in the way that it responds.
Yeah.
Dang. So
well,
yeah.
Thanks for sharing your story with everybody. That's very vulnerable state to like go back into.
I hope it
like 16 years later.
I hope it resonates with somebody. I don't know. Every time I tell my story, I think I like did a horrible job, and I think I like hit so many points wrong. Or
I'm excited to hear about this college experience.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to this season as far as like diving into some of these stories. But that's a quick intro and like overview of the past.
Yeah. Soon we will be going into my story, but I literally think I'm going to convince you to tell the college part on the next episode.
What?
First. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So stay tuned for that next week.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening and for being here and for, you know, giving us your time. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Make sure to subscribe. Follow.
Yeah, how do they do it on podcasts?
Leave a review.
I think you follow.
And
then you comment and you leave a rating. And
you
say something really nice to us because
for a review. That'd be great.
We were super vulnerable today. So
yes. Yeah.
Send some nice
kudos.
Send some nice vibes.
We appreciate that. You can also find us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all the places. I have a link in the podcast description. Follow that link and you will find all the places and things that you can check us out on after the podcast. Great. All right. Well, we're going to leave and leave with the little snippet from my coming out video.
There you go.
All right. See you next time.
See you next time.
Daddy's out. That sounds funny after a coming
Not
out
Daddy's
story.
out.
Hi everyone. This is going to be a completely different video from my other videos. I've
been very nervous. My palms have been sweating. I'm sweating. I've been sitting in front of my camera for an hour not knowing exactly what I want to say. I feel like a wreck, but that's exactly what I want to show up to you guys, because this is the real me and this is who I am, and this is a real video where I'm not using jump cuts because I just want to talk to you and have a conversation. I thought about writing a poem, I thought about expressing myself artistically, but I can't figure out any other way to express myself properly to you other than to just be here and be real with you. This year I have tried something that has been different, completely different than what I've done for the previous 20 years of my life. And that thing is that I've been vulnerable with people. I've been vulnerable with my friends and my family and even my dorm community, which is extremely different. Before, I thought I could only fully express myself on YouTube because I'm at a distance from you guys. You guys are far away. You're not completely involved in the realness of my life right here. It's digital. I could sit in my room with the camera and say whatever I want and be whoever I want and no one would care. It's fine. But out here in the real world, and me actually being me in front of you, that I feel naked in that sense. But it's good. It's good. It's really good. And the crux of all of this, what I'm trying to get at, is I'm gay, and I've been struggling with my sexuality for the last 10 years of my life.